that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened. Let me get my shoes. So we're gonna move to
That's where they're trying to pass this care policy to make it a sanctuary city for transitioning children. Well, you may have seen the episode that I did before with Taryn Swain, fantastic mother of 6, and her daughter was transitioned behind her back at a Ventura County school. I took her to the city council meeting as a fluke, and God told her to pray. The mayor told her, we don't do prayer. Well, I asked Taryn if she would come speak at one of our meetings, and we've had the meeting planned for about a month. Well, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Elon Musk has pointed it out several times. Indivisible, this left-wing extreme group that is all over Ventura County, basically attacked our event. What they did is they said that we were a hate group, even though they're the hate group, and did 1-star reviews on Yelp and on Google. And the owner of the restaurant, Fearful, called us and asked us to speak to his promoter. So we called him. His name's Robbie. Well, turns out Robbie's a member of Indivisible, and he thinks that Taryn was a bully for getting her daughter through this phase in her life, and he should have let her become a boy. It was bullyish for her not to. Well, I don't believe that, and neither do many parents. Then he told us to change our speaker or we couldn't use the restaurant. Well, guess what? We don't back down to extremists, and we don't back down to tactics like that. You're not dealing with the old Republican Party, Indivisible.
protest. It is not generally speaking unruly, but fires have been started.
Demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
Why so many of these unaccompanied alien minors are being put to work in slave wages and slave conditions all across California to pay off their cartel debts. The Democrat Party is funneling these profits from rape, profits from exploitation, and yes, profits from murder, into the hands of the cartels that control the north of Mexico, that assassinate politicians, that assassinate judges, that assassinate women and children, and that smuggle fentanyl into our country. Cartels are waging war against America, and their allies are the Democrat Party.
I will say these operations have been much more difficult because of Los Angeles and California's sanctuary policies. SB 54 has been difficult for us, and we don't have the backup of your local law enforcement.
I know with SB 54, and I'm going to get into immigration a little bit, you're limited on what you can do in cooperation with ICE.
That's correct.
We have had 300,000 migrant children go missing from the Biden administration. And it's my understanding the 101 corridor is a big corridor to traffic kids and people. What are you doing as sheriff to look out for possible migrant children that could be hidden in our communities?
That's a great question. So because we can't have any involvement at all with immigration other than very narrow parameters that SB 54 allows, unless we get a call of truly like a human trafficking type of thing for us to investigate, we're not actively investigating anything as it relates to immigration. We have to rely on our federal partners to do that exclusively.
Well, immediately I can talk to you about what has been happening with the Biden administration. It is a copy paste of what Barack Obama started, and it's called the Global Compact of Immigration, that it was brought by the United Nations. And this Global Compact basically opens up the borders and the floodgates of every single country. Now, the whole continent, the majority of the continent of America, it is in the Global Compact that the United Nations made to accept refugees and asylees through non-ports of entry. When the Trump administration came in, surprisingly, they won, and they thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win and continue with this project of the Global Compact. But immediately Donald Trump said, this does not align with American policies. I am not going to give away the sovereignty of my country to the world. There's a process and there's a law. So he got out of the Global Compact, and he took away the power from the United Nations to have power over their borders. So immediately that was number one. Number two, Joe Biden came in. And immediately after he won, I predicted this. I said he's going to go back to be a collaborator of the Global Compact on Migration. And as soon as you know, Antonio Guterres, that he is a delegate of the United Nations, started posting on Twitter that he is really happy that the United States will go again on their way to the Compact on Migration. And that has been the number one problem. If you eliminate the Global Compact on Migration, you take away the power of these NGOs that they're, taking advantage and making money out of human misery massively, also out of human trafficking, and ultimately being an incentive to the organized crime to continue to traffic to people through non-ports of entry. So if you take away that and you eradicate that and you eliminate that, that will fix a lot the problem that you see today.
And they were using our refugee resettlement program to fly people into the country. Can you talk about that?
We discovered that a lot of these NGOs, they're aiding and abetting this to continue. And the Darien Gap, it is a humanitarian business, not only for the organized crime that works in Colombia. Now, the Colombian cartel is working all the way to Turkey. They're flying Chinese migrants all the way to the Darien Gap. This has become a humanitarian business. And the NGOs know that without this crisis and without a crisis, there will be no money. Get to know these places that is called Acandí, Turbo, and Capurganá. These are villages that they're on the Colombian side. These villages are controlled by the cartel. So basically, Hayes, it is telling the people to go into the places where the cartel it is controlling and massively making money. This is a complete disaster. The United Nations has created a disaster of migration. Migrating to the Darien Gap is the most dangerous place for migrants. I have seen decomposed bodies, assaults, rapes against women, children dying.
All these UN people are pushing climate change as the biggest threat to the world.
It's an environmental disaster. It is the Darien Gap. It is considered the little Amazon of the continent. It was a pristine jungle. It was beautiful. There's more than 60 tons of trash. The most important thing that is the contaminated water. Now the wildlife, the panthers, the jaguars, the monkeys, they cannot go down the stream and drink water. They will get sick. The enormous amount of quantities of decomposed bodies that you will find. The jungle is completely destroyed in some parts. I crossed the Darien Gap 4 times, as Ben has been the only American that has done it 4 times, and I'm the only Hispanic Latino that has done it 4 times in the whole world.
What is the most horrific thing that you have seen, especially with the kids?
Especially with the kids. The second trip that we encountered these criminals that they were assaulting, raping women. As we were going to this place, and it was extremely dangerous, there was one confession of one minor that she just got raped, and she just told me that on camera. But that was a declaration of her saying it to me and hugging me and saying, protect me. We were carrying children. There was a specific child that I carried for more than 6 to 8 hours. He was from Venezuela. He was around 11 years of age. And after 6 hours of carrying him through multiple rivers and streams, he told me, can you be my dad for one day? And that was really an impact for me, because I'm a Latino. I cannot believe what we're going through. And this elite, these people are politically using the migration for their political gain and votes, and ultimately for another political issue that is, money, and ultimately also to replace the Republican Party, because this, and at the end of the day, Democrats will have the amount of votes in the later 5 to 10 years from now. We see a lot of Chinese arriving to California, and he specifically said, yes, California is the place that I want to go. And I say, why? Do you see any Chinese CCP spies infiltrating in this massive group of people that they're vulnerable, possibly Chinese people? And he immediately started saying, yes. Everybody in China knows that. But they don't want nobody to know that you have infiltrated Chinese communist spies infiltrating into your borders. I have seen, really good people. South America, I have walked really good people, but I have walked also with really bad people. And one of the caravans, I was the first one to whistleblow this in the year 2021. I started saying to the American people in one of the caravans, I have documented and walked 11. And I said to the American people, El Tren de Aragua is coming to your border. El Tren de Aragua, it is one of the most dangerous gangs that operates from the prison in Venezuela, that is already violently, delinquently operating right now in the United States, and it's extremely famous right now. The majority of these men that they're here, they're part of this gang, and they're coming into the United States of America, and nobody's going to stop them.
I thank you for inviting me to testify at this critical hearing on the crisis of trafficked, exploited, and the staggering 320,000 missing migrant children. Today, my goal is to spark action to rescue children, prosecute traffickers, and dismantle trafficking infrastructure. We must prevent children from being lost into slave labor, commercial sex, organ harvesting, and other unspeakable evils. Children, boys and girls, are being sold for sex. Just last month, I spoke with a care provider in Florida who told me about cases of migrant children as young as 8 with sexually transmitted diseases. 8 years old. Last week, I spoke with a private investigator in Texas who shared challenges trying to find an emergency shelter for this one girl. She's only 12, an unaccompanied minor who was 9 months pregnant and about to go into labor. How did we get here? For over a decade, the United States Department of Health and Human Services has been responsible for the suffering of countless children. HHS has a 10-year demonstrated record of losing children to sponsors who abuse, exploit, traffic, and harm children in unthinkable ways. Child trafficking has evolved into an international syndicate of gangs and cartels. It's highly organized and efficient. It mirrors the tactics and operations of terrorist organizations. Smugglers and traffickers have moved more than 500,000 children. They flooded across our borders, and we have delivered them to criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations who are using the UC program as a white glove delivery service of children. Criminal sponsors are defrauding the U.S. government by using this government program as a logistical chain in their trafficking operation. These children are not merely victims, they are hostage of transnational criminals and the financial backbone of material support for organizations seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
Where are the children?
So, Lori, this is the sad truth, is it's very difficult to find trafficked children, which is why Aaron and the plan that he has been advocating for nearly a year now is to use a totally new targeting data solution. This is what's going to have to be done. Homeland Security Investigations is out. They are trying to find the kids, but they are trying to find kids off of the release address. Trafficked kids are not at the release address. And Tom Homan has mentioned that what we need to do is go after the sponsors themselves. Now, of course, this is not what HHS wants to happen at all. No one wants the sponsored data released. And because the sponsored data has not been released, it's causing children not to be found. This is the push that we're trying to make, is that this data has to be released. It has to be put into the hands of highly capable, very qualified intel specialists like Aaron. And then the networks can be found. And when they find those networks, they find the children.
Aaron, you found all of this, and sure that your level of frustration at this point is just maxed. Tell us what's going on, how, and be real. Totally tell us how you feel about everything that's happening, and what plan would you have to save these kids? And did you ever get into that database that you were not allowed to get into while you were working for the Department of Homeland Security?
So to recap what's going on is this is called failing. And I want to make sure this is actually clear, because I said this recently at an event and someone's like, hey, thanks for what you're doing. And I'm like, don't do that because we're failing right now. Like, just don't do that. And then they were like, oh, you got to stay positive, no, we are failing. And we're going to keep failing until we find a way to succeed. And that we have ways to succeed. We're just not doing it. No, we are. The current state of things is this is called failure.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the evil of child trafficking caused by the open border policies under President Joe Biden and his administration. I served in the United States Border Patrol for 24 years as a deputy patrol agent in charge in San Diego sector. I worked under 5 presidential administrations, and only one president secured the border, President Donald Trump. Border Patrol agents went from working and being supported by the greatest border president in American history to the worst, President Joe Biden. My last year in the Border Patrol was Joe Biden's first year in office. On his first day in office, I watched in disbelief as 94 executive orders cascaded down from Washington, D.C., obliterating every immigration policy that had been provided the most secure border in America's history. Border Patrol agents were forced to carry out unconstitutional orders that violated every law in the Immigration Nationality Act. President Biden, through Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, created policy out of thin air, ignored federal immigration law, and facilitated the largest mass invasion into America that the world has ever seen. Over 50 million illegal aliens that populate our nation. Between 1 in 6 and 1 in 7 residents in America is an illegal alien. America has suffered the greatest demographic shift in modern history. That Biden, Harris, and Mayorkas intentionally, strategically, and purposely weaponized illegal immigration and use it as a tool to fundamentally transform America. Inside this invasion, the unspoken evil of child trafficking, and more specifically, child sex trafficking, has flourished. At the end of this current administration, the number of children trafficked will have grown to over 550,000 unaccompanied alien children known as UACs. This horrific number of children will have been arrested, released into America, and then lost. To put this into context, during President Trump's last year in office, Customs and Border Protection arrested 30,557 UACs who were accounted for and not lost. Conversely, in the first year of Biden's presidency, CBP arrested 147,975 UACs, most of which are unaccompanied for and lost. In 2023, Congressional Hearings Health and Human Services Javier Becerra and Director of Office of Refugee Resettlement forced to admit that their agency had no contact with over 85,000 UACs. They were lost. What did DHS, HHS, and ORR do to correct this humanitarian disaster? Nothing. In fact, all three agencies created further policies and procedures to increase the efficiency of moving UACs from the border to the interior of the United States to unknown and unvetted sponsors. Unaccompanied alien children were being handed off to total strangers. Then they disappeared into the darkness of labor and sex trafficking. A year later, in August of 2024, the Inspector General with oversight over DHS issued a report stating the number lost UACs was not 85,000. It was over 320,000. The evil of child sex trafficking is difficult to digest and understand. After conducting numerous interviews with officers, agents, and whistleblowers from every alphabet agency and department, it was made clear to us that the federal government knowingly and actively facilitated these criminal acts. I state without reservation that the United States federal government is the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history.
I want your audience to understand the federal government does not have the manpower or wherewithal or mechanisms to move tens of millions of people from the border into the interior of America. That can only happen with the evil partnership. We interview an individual that worked inside the DHS. He or she sat there and hit the electronic fund transfer to send the money to the NGOs. So he or she was responsible for, so you were just in charge of one organization. Yes, all I did was Jewish Family Services. I said, okay, what's the largest check you cut? Well, I sent them $600 million. Hold on a second. $600 million for how long? Like 3 years? And he goes, come on, man, get in the game. 2 or 3 months. Jewish Family Services is smaller than Catholic Charities. We gave as much or more to Catholic Charities. The organ harvesting, that it has to be in a very, it's got to be very clean and sterile. And hey, dude, stop. This is not happening in Mount Sinai Hospital, or this is happening on a table in a bar or some shanty town in Africa or Mexico, and they're zippering the kids, meaning they're cutting them like a hog and splitting them. You literally grabbing their organs and throwing into an ice bucket and then zipping them up and throw them away.
President Trump was doing DNA testing, which isn't happening anymore. And they're just handing kids off and they're not really following up with where they've gone or anything else.
There's a lot of shocking stuff that we've encountered on the ground. And there's other shocking stuff that you could see just by sitting behind a desk and research on this stuff. Just to talk about what we've seen, though, on the ground, there was a particular situation in Florida where you had these Guatemalan illegal aliens that were using this network of houses to try to sponsor kids. So, if you try to send 13 kids to one address, that's going to raise some red flags, despite how crappy the vetting procedures are at ORR, that's the Office of Refugee Resettlement. It's a subdivision of the Department of Health and Human Services. Despite how shady their vetting procedures are, it would probably still raise a flag if you saw all these kids going to one address. What these Guatemalan illegals were doing was they used a network of houses to attempt to sponsor these kids. From the documents we had, this particular couple attempted to sponsor at least 13 kids across this network of 5 houses. Now, at these houses, there were also other illegal aliens who were sponsoring children. And we found a couple of kids who were delivered to this network and interviewed them. And what we were told was that, basically kids are coming in. They're brought in as young as 5 years old is what we were told. They're told, okay, well, tomorrow you're going to go to work. We got a job lined up for you. What we were told was that there is a debt, or at least the children we spoke to, there was a debt held over their head, and it's been held over their head for years.
On the first day of his administration, Joe Biden would sign 94 executive orders, obliterating every immigration policy Donald Trump put into place. And then he would allow 30 million illegal immigrants to invade America. Would you believe me, or would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
When you entered office, you reversed all those successful policies, and you opened up the border, and you've created this catastrophe.
The result is the largest increase in illegal immigration in the history of the United States. We enforce the law.
Your open border policy is aided and abetting the murder of Americans, the rape of Americans.
My constituents want you impeached because they believe you've committed treason. They believe you're a traitor.
America, what if I told you transnational terrorist organizations like the Venezuelan gang Tren de Agua, armed with AK-47s and AR-15, would be kicking in doors, storming into apartment complexes, forcing terrorized citizens at gunpoint to pay them rent? Imagine these criminals not only seizing control of an entire city, but also declaring an audacious war on U.S. sovereignty, turning American neighborhoods into third world hellholes.
Those seen in this video, though, believed to be associated with the violent Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua.
To your knowledge, what are the men in this video doing?
They patrol the complex. They control who comes in, who goes out. They go from door to door. They have forced their way into many complexes. They have thrown people out.
Two others believed to be involved in the attack of New York City police officers in Times Square in January. And the suspect in the murder of Laken Riley has connections as well.
We have no ability to verify their criminal background or whether they belong to a Venezuelan gang, but yet we're still releasing them in the United States.
There was one individual that was sponsoring children that took in 60 children. What is your take on the trafficking? Also, the fact that Jill Biden was sitting on the board of Save the Children in Guatemala. What is your take on the NGOs and the billion-dollar business that's happening trafficking kids?
The NGOs that are running these child trafficking networks, if you will. This is an active lawsuit from our DOJ that the DOJ has against the NGO Save the Children. These facilities are operating in Texas. I think they have about 10 or 12 facilities in Texas. For example, one Southwest Key report describes a Southwest Key youth care worker who in 2022 repeatedly sexually abused a 5-year-old girl, an 8-year-old girl, and an 11-year-old girl at Casa Franklin in El Paso, Texas. The 8-year-old girl disclosed that the youth care worker would repeatedly enter their bedroom in the middle of the night and touch their private areas, and he threatened to kill their families if they disclosed the abuse. Another Southwest Key report describes a Southwest Key shift leader supervisor at this facility who in 2019 repeatedly raped, abused, and threatened a teenage girl throughout the shelter at their stay at Casa Montezuma in Channelview, Texas. The child reported the abuse by passing a note to her teacher one day when the shift leader was out of the country on vacation. And she goes on to describe the abuse. I could read you this report, Lori, and it would take us the entire 30 minutes just to go through all of the charges of an NGO that is being funded by our tax dollars that are operating in Texas, where the employees at these facilities are raping these minor children. So when I got to Guatemala, what I got to get was this letter from the Attorney General. Actually, this will really blow your mind. This is the one that Anthony Blinken is on a war path to try to get fired. So this is the Attorney General who's now raided these facilities, right? What I'm holding here, this is a letter to Ken Paxton. This letter was sent out on April 12th, and if I read it, it'd break your heart. But to sum it up, it basically says, Dear Ken Paxton, we know that Texas is aware that there's a major issue with child trafficking because of the open border crisis that your government, your country created. We know that our children are being kidnapped from Guatemala, they're being trafficked, and they're being processed migratorily in the state of Texas, where they are being placed in these facilities. Our children from Guatemala are getting raped inside your facilities. And we know that you're aware of it, and it seems like you're doing nothing to stop it. We now have intel that says that these NGOs are running a child trafficking network, and we'd like your cooperation, your joint agreement to tackle this issue together.
Got invited to meet with the president of Honduras. She's super socialist. The next day I flew to Guatemala and met with the president of Guatemala, who was super conservative. And what I found was so interesting, politics aside, they didn't care. Your open border policies are killing our children. Your open border policies are incentivizing traffickers to come into our countries, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, even as south as Colombia and Ecuador, working with them. They're seeing an increase of kidnapping of their children, and they know why. They're easily being delivered, in large part, to Biden and his horrific, demonic policies. Their children are being disappeared and trafficked and raped and put into slave labor, organ harvesting, thanks to these open border policies. So it's not even political when you get south of the border. It's just a humanitarian situation. And these open border policies will go down in history as the worst policies since 1850 with the Fugitive Slave Act. Who was behind the 19th century slavery? The Democratic Party. Who's behind the 21st century slavery? The Democratic Party.
If we take 3 of those stadiums and we set them side by side, this will give you a great visualization of what 323,000 missing children would look like. On August 19th of 2024, the Office of Inspector General and the Department of Homeland Security released a report that stated HHS had taken custody of over 448,820 UACs. UAC stands for unaccompanied alien child. These are children that arrive at the U.S. border without a parent. As of August 24th, 2024, HHS has openly admitted to losing 323,000 children. Now, in order to understand why I say people like DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, HHS Secretary Xavier Arbesara, and ORR Director Robert Mercos will be sentenced to death if they are found guilty of the crimes that we expose in our documentary. To grasp the full implications of this situation, it's important to understand the roles and responsibilities of these key figures and their respective organizations in managing the issue of unaccompanied alien children. HHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, as the head of the Department of Homeland Security, he oversees border security and immigration enforcement, which directly impacts the intake and initial processing of UACs. Next, we have HHS Secretary Xavier Arbesara. The Department of Health and Human Services under Becerra takes custody of UACs once they cross the border. HHS, through its Office of Refugee Resettlement, is responsible for the care, placement, and eventual release of these children. Next, we have ORR Director Robin Marcos. As the Director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, Marcos oversees the welfare and placement of these children in the U.S., including ensuring they are placed in safe environments. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, led by Marcos, is central to this crisis. Allegations against these officials suggest systemic failures, criminal neglect, trafficking of children across state lines, child endangerment, and crimes against humanity, all of which could lead to severe legal consequences when proven in court.
Look what is happening right now. Look what is happening right now with these evil people. Obama, Hillary, Kamala, Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, all this team. There's more than 300,000 children, over 300,000 children that they came through the border, they released them, and we don't know where they are. Kamala, where are the children? Kamala, where are the children? You know, these people, Kamala and Biden, they're the biggest human traffickers in the history. And everyone knows that. And that's why I'm here to give my 100% to support my dear friend, President Donald Trump. And again, we will win for the third time.
Back to the country?
It doesn't matter whether they're terrorists.
Okay.
Let me tell you why.
Were you okay with J6ers being thrown in jail without due process? Did you fight for them? Did you fight for them? Did you fight for John Strand, who was in jail for 4 years without due process?
Did they go through due process?
No.
Okay, well, if they didn't go through due process,
and you guys were real silent about that, but give me an MS-13 member.
Whoa.
Thing that's very concerning to me, especially with what's happened with the Middle East, is how many people could be terrorists that are in our country right now. I believe this morning I heard there were 1,500 people that came through our border alone from Iran. You had found passports down at the border. Afghanistan. 2 guys, I believe, that are on the terrorist watch list. Get into that a little bit. Let us know what you saw firsthand at our southern border.
So I went freelance, started covering the border on my own. All of Biden's term on the border, not the full time, but like.
Well, I was trying to get you. You were always at the border. Every time I'm like,
Yeah.
Jeff, come on the show. I'm at the border.
So I literally went down there at all 4 border states, including my home state of California, where you are. I would camp out right where all the illegal aliens were crossing the border. I'd literally sleep right next to the border wall most of the time and then film them when they were coming across night and day because no MSM went out there and covered this stuff. And so what happened was one place in Lupeville, Arizona is where the first time I saw international border invasion, illegal aliens coming across from Islamic nations, from Africa, like Senegal and Guinea. There were people from the Middle East, tons of people from Syria were coming over, Azerbaijan, they're coming, tons were coming across. Border Patrol literally come up to me. These guys are from this Middle East country, blah, blah, blah. So the majority of people coming across in that area were from Islamic majority African nations, over 50%. It was massive. I mean, you've seen some of my videos, huge, 800 to 1,000 a day, every day for 7 months. And I was filming there for 7 weeks, camped out there, and it was apocalyptic. Recently, I hit up California. Last year, I spent 4.5 months in Acumba, California, where tons of people from the Middle East were coming over, Turkey, Syria, Iran, Pakistan, and then tons of Chinese people were coming over also. in that area, and they're the ones that are trying to get away. Where I found the passports, I found a passport in Hakumba. It was a guy from Islamic Republic of Mauritania. So I turned it into a Border Patrol agent, and he told me to turn off my camera. And he goes, yeah, this guy is on a terror watch list.
Is he in our country today? Do you know?
He told me that he believed they picked him up, but probably let him go because the Biden administration
catch and release.
Let everyone go.
When Joe Biden won the presidency, as I said to the American public, you're going to see a massive flow like you've never seen it before.
Yeah.
And it started. And now I'm dare to say right here, Miss Lori, and let's check out 4 years from now on this interview. If you, in the 2028 election, if a radical leftist, if a progressive mercenary candidate, or if a rhino, like you guys say it, wins an election in the United States of America, you're going to see a flow like worse than it was before. It's going to be 2 times stronger, 2 times bigger. Why? There was more than 1 million migrants that they stayed on the borders waiting for the CBP-1 app because it was canceled. You have scattered hundreds of thousands in the central parts of Mexico, and also you have hundreds of thousands waiting in Central America, millions that they're waiting to come. It is going to be a massive flow if no other candidate that is not going to protect the borders of the United States of America. It's not America first. You're going to see a flow that is like you never have seen ever in your life, Miss Lori. And I'm curing this because they are part of this globalist compact on migration and open up the borders.
Sunday night, I asked her to not stay up super late because of her coming to work with me in the morning first to do her summer school. She said, okay. I told her good night and I love you. I went to bed, not realizing that that was going to be the last time I saw her.
We're best friends. Yeah. We're going to shake it again.
I woke up to notice she wasn't in her bed. I'm in my heart trying not to lose my mind because I don't know where she is. I finally remembered her phone had a location on, and her phone was pinging just 2 minutes down the road, right behind the skate park. I start driving to the direction the phone was being pinged at, and I see a couple cop cars with lights on. I see yellow tape, and immediately my heart drops and sinks to the bottom of my stomach. My daughter's hands and ankles were both bound. She was strangled to death, left with no pants. And I know in my heart, she fought incredibly hard. She was not going down without a fight.
We begin with 2 men we're learning are charged with capital murder tonight, accused of killing a 12-year-old girl.
Police say these men strangled her before dumping her into that creek. Both men were in the country illegally.
Apprehended, then released by Border Patrol less than 3 weeks before Jocelyn's death. The men accused of killing Jocelyn Nungare are affiliated with the gang known for brutal violence.
Kamala Harris was in charge of immigration in our borders. If we had better border policies and not open borders and not these catch and release policies, I truly believe this all could have been prevented. Under her being vice president of this country, my daughter's life was ripped away from her. She had her entire life ahead of her.
Happy birthday, dear Jocelyn.
My daughter is 6 feet in the ground based off of policies that she allowed to keep. Kamala Harris did have one job, and she not only failed, not me, she failed my daughter. She failed Jocelyn. You know, she was only 12. President Trump reached out, gave me his sincerest condolences as not a former president, but just as a father, someone who cares. I believe Donald Trump needs to be back in office. I can at least know that my next child will be safe in this country.
America's borders are now secure because of President Trump. He has restored the rule of law,
enforced our immigration laws, and defended America's sovereignty. The president immediately declared a national emergency on the southern border, deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion, and ended reckless catch and release policies.